Congressman Kevin McCarthy joining us in Studio B, taking some time to answer a few questions. Can't thank you enough for stopping by.
Well, thanks for having me.
You're a very busy man these days.
Yes, but it's fun to be back here.
Have you had a chance to settle in?
Yeah, no, it's been good. We've been busy. I mean, it took a few extra days to win that speakership. I don't know if you watched.
I heard about it. 15 rounds. That's usually a heavyweight fight back in the old days.
It was, you know.
Yeah.
And my father always said, and I told you this, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. So when you look at the end of the fight, there's one who won, and we were still standing, so we won.
You've already got some things accomplished that you wanted to do. Talk about the difficulty it is when we're in this type of a session where the House is controlled by one party, the Senate's controlled by another, and trying to get stuff passed and moved along.
Well, some people think it's really difficult, others think it's an opportunity. Divided government, we have achieved a lot of big things at times. I mean, think about it. That first couple days of the speaker race, it looked a little chaotic, but it actually made us stronger, because think about what's happened that first week. Yes, the first bill we did was repeal 87,000 IRS agents, because government should be here to help you, not go after you. Then another thing that we did, we created for the first time in history a new select committee on China. One of the most bipartisan votes, 146 Democrats joined with us. How do we bring those jobs back from China? How do we make sure China stops stealing our intellectual property, stop controlling industries like medical supplies and others? Let's not be dependent on China, let's be dependent upon America. We also had a very big bipartisan vote with more than 100 Democrats voting with us to stop the president from selling that strategic petroleum reserve where we keep our oil in a time of crisis. But he's been selling it to China and others. And what that does, it depresses the price for people producing here in America, like here in Kern County. Those were bipartisan votes. So we're starting very strong as we move forward. But these bills will have to go to the Senate. The Senate hasn't been in yet. But when you have that strong of a bipartisan vote, pretty good chance it's going to get to the president's desk.
Now, there will be debate. I know that you understand this. And the first one that everyone's talking about right now is when it comes to the debt limit. Are you expecting this to be the first kind of head-to-head matchup between the McCarthy Republicans, as we'll call them, and the Freedom Caucus?
No. We'll be 100%. We'll be
100%
united. And this is a real discussion about America itself. I mean, it's what every household has to do. I mean, if you gave your child a credit card and they spent it all and they're at the limit, do you automatically just give a higher limit, or do you look at what they're spending at? And what really America needs to look at, we just hit our debt limit, but it really doesn't become a problem till June. So now's an opportunity for both sides to sit down and find common ground. Where can we eliminate some waste, right? We're at 120% of our GDP to debt. We're at $31 trillion. We've never been here before. So what we're doing is we're harming our future generations. We're paying more on interest that's going to come up than we're paying on our military. I mean, that makes America weaker. So now is a moment of time to calmly sit down together, find places, and as you say, Republicans and Democrats, our government's designed to find compromise. Let's find compromise. Can anyone say there's not waste in government? I mean, for the president to say, I won't even negotiate about this. Well, every state, every county, every city, every household has to. The first thing you have to do is start producing a budget so you know how you're spending. The Democrats didn't do that. And the really sad part is when the Democrats were all in power, they increased spending by 30%. So I know there's places we can find common ground and eliminate the waste for the hardworking American that's paying those taxes.
So when they come to you and they say, we want you to pass this and raise the debt limit without considerations, what do you say to that?
Well, that's not responsible. I say you should raise the debt limit, but it should be a responsible debt limit you raised. You first should look at, is there places you can eliminate waste? Is there places that you could start to put America onto a balanced budget? Like every household, like every state, the state can't print more money. The cities and counties can't print more money. Why would we sit back after the Democrats have taken us from $4 trillion in spending to $7 trillion? They added $10 trillion more dollars. We spent a lot of money out with COVID. Is there some that's still sitting there? Well, shouldn't we bring some of that back in? Is there some waste in programs that we can make more efficient for the American public and not waste it? Yeah, we should scrutinize and make sure there's no blank checks.
Can you pledge that there will be no cuts to Social Security and Medicare and that they'll be taken off the table in the negotiations?
Yeah, look, my first place is to always protect Social Security and Medicare. And the real challenge that happens here that people have to look back, if you just keep at the pace we're going now, it's going to harm Social Security and Medicare. There won't be money there for it. So it's like anything else that's happening in the future. You should look and plan for it, right? And you should, if America is on a balanced budget, nobody has to worry about anything. We're investing in the future. We're stronger around the world. Our economy is stronger. Our kids have a better future. But right now, with a $31 trillion debt, we're just harming it. For someone to put their heads in the sand and say, oh no, just lift it, well, you're harming the rest of the future of America by not saying we've got to put us on a better path and have a responsible debt ceiling. That's what's important.
We're in the midst of committee assignments.
Yeah.
Those are happening right now. Where do they stand right now as far as?
We have almost finished all of our committee assignments for Republicans. And the uniqueness is when you go from the minority to the majority, Republicans now have to serve on more committees because they've got more slots. You know, before no Republicans sat on 3 committees. Now everybody sits on at least 2. Some sit on 3. And if you sit on certain committees, you only sit on that one because that Ways and Means and Appropriations. There's a lot of work within there.
A lot of talk was about the contention between you and the Freedom Caucus. Talk about concessions that were made. Are those following through? Are those concessions that have been littered across the internet real? Are they false?
No. You know, it's interesting. Everyone talks about, I want the White House. I want to see where these top secret papers are. I tell them, well, look behind your Corvette because it seems that's where they are. You know, our rule package was the same rules package that we had on January 1st that we passed in Congress. The only difference is that we changed from 5 members that can move to vacate the chair to 1. And I knew that was always going to happen. But one thing I had done, and it's interesting that people don't look at this, when I became leader 2 years prior, I had to appoint people to rules and to steering committee. You know who I appointed? Freedom Caucus members. Why? Because I think people, you got to have a microcosm of your entire conference on each committee. Right. So you have a viewpoint from all aspects, and they have a voice. You produce better legislation, you have better debate, and you know what happens? The bill's easier to pass when it comes to the floor. So we've got to think different. We've got to think from the beginning of the bill, not the end of the bill, and we'll produce better policy that way. You have promised investigations. They are now starting to stack up, or just what's going to come. We've heard January 6th. The president's documents, of course, those are big in the headlines right now. Have you determined where you plan to start? Yeah, we laid this out. The challenge is you have a lot of places where there has been no accountability, right? Do we know where the origins of COVID started? You'd had no hearings on that. What about what happened in Afghanistan that created 13 new Gold Star families? You want to make sure that never happens again. But there was no accountability, no looking back. The White House didn't want it. You wonder what's transpired, and Congress has a responsibility, a constitutional responsibility, to oversee all of justice. We've watched what has happened. A number of whistleblowers from the FBI has come to us to watch that things happen politically. So we've created a new arm, something that Congress did in the 70s when they had something like that. They called it the Church Committee based upon the senator, where Congress has a responsibility to oversee if these agencies have gotten out of control in any way, shape, or form. So we've created one of those. But the difference will be between us and the Democrats. We won't make any of this political, right? The Democrats can appoint whatever Democrats they want, unlike Nancy Pelosi, who wants to pick and choose. And we'll look at this in an open way that all of America can see, because I believe a strong check and balance. You've got to have a government that's held accountable. You have to have an economy that's strong. That's why we're going to work to make us energy independent, lower the price of fuel, tackle inflation that the Democrats brought us by overspending. That's another thing that will happen when you look at our fiscal policy. You want a nation that is safe, secure the border, or watch what's happening on that border. I mean, and no longer do the problems stay on the border, right? We just watched last week cartels murdering young babies in the Central Valley. We've watched, and you've reported, the amount of fentanyl that we're catching along this valley. But more importantly, I was talking to a good friend. His son died last year from a fentanyl overdose. He grew up with my son Connor. We played sports together. We coached together. We watched these kids' futures so bright. But that fentanyl across the border of Mexico. We want to make sure our streets are safe, that we're not attacking law enforcement. We're actually providing them the things they need. We want to make sure parents have a say in their kids' education. Right? So we're going to pass a Parents' Bill of Rights. These are all things we put out in the commitment to America. So it's not new. We told the voters before if they trusted us. And this is the part that Republicans will feel is, why did that take place at the beginning? Because in the last 4 years, you watched Republicans in the Senate lose. You watched them at the White House, in the state houses, in the governors. But there's one place Republicans have won every time, in the House. So we have a big responsibility. It's actually better that we had that debate earlier and not in the middle, because now we're stronger for it, and I believe the policies will be stronger and every voice will be heard.
When it comes to that, who will be leading that charge? Will it be Jim Jordan?
Well, there's a number of places. Every committee has a responsibility for oversight.
Okay.
And there's so much lack of oversight. Like, what happened in COVID? You'll find that in Energy and Commerce. But we have our own select committee on that. You'll find Oversight Committee doing some. You'll find Jim Jordan in the Judiciary Committee on the Justice Department. But you also find it on Ways and Means, looking at the IRS. You'll also find it on Energy and Commerce, looking at from a medical supply, where were we failure there? We've watched since the Democrats had one-party control, they spent trillions of dollars but had no oversight of it. And it won't just be Republicans doing the oversight, Democrats are allowed too. We're going to move hearings, like from Homeland Security, down to the border, so it no longer could go unnoticed. But we'll learn from the experts right there, and Republicans and Democrats alike will have these hearings. We're going to move hearings out of Washington to America, so Americans can have a say in what's happening in their country as well.
Speaking of what's happening here in California, of course, as you well know, the flooding, the heavy rainstorms, the governor welcoming President Biden in. They toured an area of Central California looking at some of the devastation. But it just continues to reignite the issue of water here in a state that has suffered from exceptional drought. Congressman David Valadao has put forth water bills continuously. Everyone talking about water banking and water storage, but that seems like a solution for the future rather than right now. And you've got all the water that everyone always talks about flowing out to the ocean from up north rather than coming down. Is there anything that the federal government, and what can they do in order to try to force the issue more here in California?
Well, you have so much of the north, and it's always this way, right? A long history and a long saying in California is whiskey's for drinking, water's for fighting. So I think at any time you should start storage. We've been fighting this for years. I mean, it's kind of like when you think about the debt ceiling. Oh, just lift it. No, should you start what you're spending? Right now, we should start more ability for storage, because we're going to have another year like this too, but we're also going to have other years that are droughts. Prepare for them. Why don't we learn our lessons, right? But what's very important to do right now is allow the pumping of more water from the Delta down to Southern California, because you can also store in different ways. Land banking, right? And we have a lot of that in the Central Valley. Raise our water tables, right? Lay it out there, because we've been pumping, we've lowered the water table, right? Move that water down as far as we can, because right now you're just putting it out to the ocean. So you're taking fresh water and making it salt water. Then you want to spend billions to put a desalination plant to take that salt water and make it back into fresh water. We need to be smarter about this, and this is where Gavin Newsom has failed time and again. If we just lifted Shasta by 3 feet, that's the greatest return on the investment. We've been trying to do that for a number of decades. We've had a number of plans that we have funded from the federal government, the studies and others, for decades for more storage, but he's fought our ability to do that. As Californians, our population had used to always grown until he became governor. Now we're decreasing, but we still have more people here than we have the capability to store. We need more water storage, and we need to plan for the future. Smart people plan for the next generation. They have failed, and we should start now, but allow more water to be pumped down to get as much storage as possible now, and let's take this opportunity to build more storage.
With the push for clean energy, electric vehicles, not just here in California, but nationwide, obviously, and you have oil and gas with the price where it is now, is there any way to sort of strike a balance? Because it seems like it's all going full bore towards EV and clean energy, and which is disrupting the balance.
You can't pick one form of energy over the others, and this is where the Democrats have failed again, where California pays 40% higher in our electricity bills. I mean, remember what you paid when you first bought your house to today. And what happened is our grid is actually smaller because they crowded other areas out. You've got to have all the above, and what's unique with Kern County, we do. We have wind, we have solar, but we also have oil, natural gas, we have hydro, we have geothermal, and just across the way we have nuclear as well. You want to become energy independent, but we've watched what Gavin Newsom has done. He actually decreased the amount of oil being drilled in California by 20%. So that's 80,000 barrels a day. Now, did we use less oil? No. He started buying 50,000 barrels from Putin every day. And our natural gas is 41% cleaner than Russian natural gas. And people have to understand, oil is not used just for your car. It's in the buttons. It's in your phone. It's on the road, the paving. It's in your clothing. It's in the plastics that we build and model as well. So the idea that they're making us more dependent on other countries, and now our grid is not as strong as it was before. And when they want to have EVs and mandate them, and then when we have a heat wave in the summer, you can't charge them. I mean, this again is not planning for the future. A recent study came out. We need to double our amount of our capacity for our grids now and for another 10 years. So we need all the above. So we shouldn't be picking one form or the other, and we shouldn't be punishing one form because America does it more environmentally sound. We should be enhancing what God has blessed America to have. We need to be energy independent. Look what happened to Europe with Russia. Mm-hmm. Because they picked one form of energy, now they're beholden to somebody else. We want to make sure our price of our fuel is lower so Americans don't pay more, but it'll be more environmentally sound. We won't worry about any other country. We will be stronger, not just economically, but the world will be safer. Because right now, the president's policies is enhancing Russia, enhancing Iran. I mean, this becomes a real problem. The world becomes less safe.
Congressman Kevin McCarthy, Speaker of the House, joining us. Thank you for spending time with us. We truly appreciate it. And best of luck to you.
It's an honor. Thank you very much.